Hello! Today we're going to be talking about how to weave in ends. I've been working on this video for quite some time and was trying to figure out a good way to go about this. So I might have an update later if I change my mind, but we'll just go with what we have today. My rule of thumb for weaving in ends is at least 3 directions and try to stab through the yarn that you've already woven in at some point. But that's not super descriptive if you don't know where to weave the end in the first place. So first of all, you'll want to weave your ends in on the back. Now with a granny square or this hexagon motif, they have a specific front and back. Projects that are made in rows, however, they look the same on both sides generally. So you'll want to weave your ends in you want them hide them as well as you can. Looking at this granny square, these are double crochet stitches. Now they're kind of bunched up at the bottom, but you can see the structure of the stitch from the back. You have these strands that go around the previous stitch or into the hole in this case. That's the bottom of the double crochet. Then you have these lines here, and you have these lines here, and then you have those ones there. So when I'm weaving in ends, so let's say my yarn was coming at the top here, I would go down through the V and under that second bar and pull the yarn through. Then I would go down these two like this, and now I can go underneath, and this is where the main weaving happens. So I'll pull my yarn through that way, go for a while that way, and then when on the way back I'll try to stab through. But especially on this granny square, how do I keep going? You know, I've run out of bottoms of my double crochets here. Well, I will go along the top of the next 3. So I'll often go behind this, though not always. Then these 2. Then these 2, before going under all of those stitches. And then again, on the way back, I'll try to stab my yarn through. Usually it's easier to see where you can do it when you're going along the tops like this. And that's how I weave the end in. Now, this yarn I use a lot. This is Caron Simply Soft. It is super slippery. And the more slippery your yarn is, the more fastidious you need to be when you're weaving in your ends. You have to be more careful. You got to do it for longer. That stabbing through is very important. So let's look at the hexagon. This one's using single crochet stitches. So let's look on the edge here. We still have these 2 bars at the top, like we did for the double crochet. But we're right at the bottom now, right here. Ooh, I can't get that stitch up. That's because I wove the end in there. Let's go around to this side. Okay. So we have these 2 bars here, which are the bottom of the single crochet stitch. What I'd like to draw your attention to, though, is this bar here, which is actually the top of the previous row. When I'm weaving in ends on stitches that are made in rows like this, I like to go under these 2 when I start. Well, I'll go down through the top like before, and then go through these 2, and then go through these 3, as far as, you know, at least an inch if you can, you know. And then when I go back, so say this is the last 3 I went through, I would skip this first bar here and go back the other way. And just weave the same way, going under 3, going under 3, come on, there we go, under 3, and then under 3, trying to stab at some point. It's easiest to stab through the yarn you've already woven in near the beginning because you can sort of hold that yarn tight and see it better. Just do your best. Now, my rule of I keep at least 6 inches of yarn when I cut the end. I try to go in at least 3 directions and try to stab through the yarn when I can. That's because this is super slippery yarn and I use it all the time, so that's just what I always do. However, the amount of time you need to spend weaving in ends is inversely proportional to how easy it is to frog your yarn. So what do I mean by that? If your yarn is super easy to frog, you need to spend more time on your ends. If it's hard to frog, you can probably just crochet over it. So here's an example. I found this swatch in my stash here that I need to rip out. I was experimenting with Jacob's Ladders here. This yarn is fairly slippery. It's not as slippery as the Caron Simply Soft, but look how easily that frogs. I'm barely pulling on it at all and it's coming right out. Contrast that with boucle. I've started a circle here just to show you. Now I'm going to try and frog it. So first of all, pulling the same amount as before, I can barely get the loop out, and once I get to the stitch, it's not coming. Oh, look at that. I'm pulling really hard to get this out. So with this boucle yarn, I could probably just crochet over the ends and be done with it, because it's never coming apart again. So let's weave in the ends on this granny square. If you've seen my how to make a granny square video, you've seen me do this already, but this time I'm going to explain why I'm doing the things I'm doing. First thing is, when I make a granny square, I do not like that hole in the middle, so I want to close that up. My yarn, you can see my knot there is coming out of here, so I'm going to go across these stitches under the bottoms of the double crochet. Sorry, the camera's too close to my work, but I really wanted you to be able to see. So now I'm going to go under the bottoms of these. If you get your needle going the right place, it should slide through nicely, and that's what we want for this stage, because at this stage we're not really weaving in the end, we're closing up that hole. I'm going to go under these ones. So that's 3 sides now. And here's the 4th side. Now I'm going to go under, there's 5 bars here. There's the bottoms of these 2 stitches and then the bottom of my turning chain. I'm going to go under 3. Okay, now I've woven my yarn all the way around and a little bit past. I'm going to give it a tug, and that closes the hole. Now to lock that in place, I'm going to skip a bar and go back. Now I'm going to go around again, and I'm not going to try to do it easily. I'm going to try and stab through things as I go. Okay, so I've made it around. Now I need to go up, because I want to go under these stitches here. But I need to get my yarn up. I don't want to just do that, because then there'll be a strand there and it might get snagged on something and just pull the whole thing out. So I go under this one, and then under that one, and then under that one. And that will get my yarn up to the top. Now I can go back and forth under these. I'm going to do an easy as I can through. I'm going to skip a bar so I can go back. And in the middle, where I can see, this is the strand that I've woven in. Right? Because when I pull on it, it comes in. So I'm going to try to stab through that on the way back. You see there, I've gone under a couple of strands, but not the whole strand. Like the whole, I've gone under a couple of the singles, is what you would call it in spinning, before I go on. And now I'm going to go back just to extra sure. And now I can cut that yarn. The reason I know that that's enough weaving for this yarn is because I've been working with it so much, and I've washed many of these blankets made with this, and when I weave in like this, they never come out. Also, when I'm designing patterns, I often use this yarn because it's easy to see the stitches. And I don't weave in the ends until I know that it's right, but sometimes I'm wrong and have to rip out anyway, and it is a huge pain in the butt to rip out after I've woven in like this, which is how I know it's never going to come out on its own. So we're at the corner now. Now I'm at the top of the stitches. I want to get down to these. So here's my knot here. These 2 bars here are part of the knot. So I'm going to go into the next bar, just because I don't want to accidentally undo that knot. I'm going to pull the yarn through. That gets it off of the top. Now I'm going to sneak through my turning chain here, just through the back bumps. And then down through the top, or actually there's probably a chain there, down through that. And I'm in the corner here, and I've done it all in one color, but I'm going to show you what to do if you don't want, like if you've done a separate color for each row, because that looks really nice. You don't want to weave your end into a different color if you can at all avoid it, because it'll be super obvious. So I'm going to go under here. I'm going to pretend that I only have this top row to work with. I'm going to make my way across the top of the stitches in the next round. So through this little side here, under those two legs, under those two legs, and pull through. This will only show at the back, but it will show at the back. I'm going to go under these three again. And I'll do it again. So go under that guy on the side there, under those two legs of the top of the stitch, those two there. And since I'm still holding on to it, oop, lost one of my bars there. I'm going to go under these stitches. Okay, now I'm going to go back. So you saw I kind of tugged on it here. You don't want this to be too tight because it's going to bunch up your fabric. So pull it tight and then just do this lightly to put it back into place. Now I'm going to go back the other way. I'm going to go under the bottoms of these stitches, and I'm going to try to stab my needle through yarn I've woven in already. So let's find where that is. That's this. So you see right here, this is the yarn that I wove in. I'm going to stab right up through the middle of that. I'm going to go across and under these again. And because this is slippery yarn, I'm going to do it again if I can. It's a little harder to find the end now. There it is. Sort of there, okay. I'm going to go through, I'm going to stab through that and get back to the corner. In fact, I'm going to go through the other side of the corner just for a little extra bit. And that's good enough for this yarn. There you go. So, in conclusion, the harder your yarn is to frog, the less you have to worry about weaving in ends. The easier it is to frog, the more careful you need to be. And when you are weaving in your ends, you're looking for the base of the stitches and other parts of the stitch that you can put your needle through. Thanks for watching.